In this video, we're just going to be creating this JavaScript autoplay slideshow. So when it first loads up, I think it's on an 1100 millisecond timer. It just goes to the next image. We can interrupt that with the previous buttons, the next buttons, with the slider or the radio buttons down here. And once we've stopped clicking it manually, it'll start ticking again. It's perfectly responsive like this. Go full width or 50% of the width. It can also be used for mobile cases, so it still ticks. We can click on the next, we can click on the previous, click on these radio buttons, we stop, and it ticks again like that. And so if this interests you at all, stick around. Let's begin. All right, so let's start off by, we'll put all the images on screen, make those responsive, and then we'll get to the buttons, the next and previous buttons, make those responsive, and then put those radio buttons on the bottom, we'll put those on the screen, make those responsive. And then when everything's responsive, we'll then start with the actual functionality, actually moving this gallery, this slideshow thing. And so let's start with a viewport. So div.viewport. You're going to see it when I use it. It's hard to describe what a viewport is. It's basically a window. When you turn on the overflow to hidden, it boxes out anything outside the window, so you get the illusion that there's only one image on screen. So viewport, within the viewport, we need an images container to hold all of the images. And let's do 3 images for this tutorial. So we're going to have cards that hold the images. So div.card. We'll say 1, and we need 3 of these guys. And so let's put the images in there. So image, we'll use a source called Pixum. So Pixum, or excuse me, s:// will be a Pixum. It's a random image generating site. Not photos, and we'll say 800 by 350. We'll modify the 350 in a second. For this, the class will use the, we'll say card image like that. All right, so modify the 350. If we have the same dimensions for all these images, it's going to give us the same image. This would be visually kind of boring and incoherent. So just modify it slightly so it gives us 3 different images. This is card 2, and this is card 3. There we go. Let's save. All right, so let's style this thing up. We will start with the viewport. So style, I want to start there. There we go. We'll start by normalizing the body. So margin 0, a padding of 0. We'll do a width of 100 viewport width, a height of 100 viewport height, and we'll overflow hidden, just to get rid of the scroll bars on the right side and the bottom. All right, so viewport. So dot viewport, and we're just going to center everything on the screen. A lot of the code's going to repeat itself, so I'll just copy and paste it. So margin 0, padding of 0. For the viewport, for the size of a card, for now we'll start at 500 pixels by 300 pixels. Pixels, there we go. We'll say height, 300 pixels. And what are we doing here? Let's say position of absolute. We'll do a top of 50%. A left of 50%, a transform of negative 50%, and overflow hidden like that. Did it not do this? Transform, this should be a translate. There we go. So that's all the viewport does. It boxes out all of the images. If I take off the overflow, you can see what this thing actually looks like. The images are going vertically. We'll change that once we create a function to make them go horizontally. All right, so move on to the image container, card, and then the card image. So this is going to be the images container. And again, much of the same code. So I'll copy all of this. And we're just centering everything on screen. Save, you're not going to see a huge difference until we get to the card image. Or excuse me, the card, which is right now. So .card, there we go. Same thing, so let's copy all of this. Actually, before we do that, the width is not 500. So just going to inherit from the viewport. So this guy's width and height is just going to be this guy's width and height. This guy's width and height is going to be this guy's width and height, which is this guy's width and height. So everything draws from the viewport. So when you change the dimensions of the viewport, it changes the dimensions of all these guys here. So let me copy all this. This is how we're making it responsive, where you just have to change one property, and all of the other properties fall like dominoes. Margin 0, good. Save. And now all of the images, because this guy's absolute and this guy's the card, all of these images are on top of one another. So let's go with the card image now. For this guy, we have to make the images fit the viewport now. Currently, these images are still at 350 or 800 by 350, 352, and 354. So the image, no margin, no padding. Max width, we're going to say 100%. Say max height, same thing, 100%. And position, we'll just do relative for this guy. Top, left, transform, save. There we go. And so these images are maintaining their aspect ratio, and they're fitting inside of the, let me do this so you can see the viewport. They're fitting inside the viewport. So this guy's like 800 by like 250, but the viewport is still 500 by 300. So let's do a background color of red. Save. There we go. And all the images are on top of one another. So let's create a function that kind of splays these out. So the left card in a 1, 2, 3 image carousel displays here, the middle card here, and the right card on the right side here. So let's go down here, write a script, inline script, and let's capture all of these things first. So we need the viewport. It's going to be document.querySelector, document.querySelector, it's .view-port. We'll need the images, all of the images, so I'll just say images, document.querySelector, and we'll say .images-container, like that. We'll need the width of one card, and so I'll say card underscore width, and we'll just do a parse float, and we'll just say get computed style of, we'll just take the first card, so children 0, and we need the width property. We also need to know how many cards are in the deck, and we'll go by the index, not by the actual number. So number of cards by index, and that's just going to be math.floor. That's not a math floor. We'll just do, and what is it going to be? Images.children.length -1. The next guy's going to be the floor. We need to know the middle card by index, and that's going to be math.floor. We're just flooring it because if 5, what's 5 divided by 2? It's 2.5. You can't have a 2.5 index of an array. So we're just going to floor it to 2. So floor, and we're just going to take the number of cards by index divided by 2 like that. All right, so let's write that function that orders these cards from left to right. So we'll call that function order cards. We'll do it right here, function order underscore cards, like that. All right, so first things first, I'm going to write all the logic of this and then I'll explain it after, because it's going to be a bit difficult to explain it as I go. So we need a counter for the right, like this. Start that at 1. We need a counter for the left. We start that at the middle card by index. And let's begin our for loop. So let I is equal to 0, I is less than the images.children.length. We're just going to do something to each card. So images.children.length like that. We'll do an I++. And first things first, images.children. We'll set the style transition duration property. Transition duration, images, children, I, transition duration. We'll set this to 0, just so we don't have any overlap in terms of the timing of the animations here. And let's do an if conditional block. So if the I, the current card we're on, is less than the middle card by index, we know we're working with the left half of the deck. So we're going to do something to the left half of the deck. Else if I is greater than the middle card by index, we know we're on the right side of the deck. Else we know we're on the actual middle card of the deck. So what are we going to do? Well, all the left cards of the deck, we're just going to shift to the left like this. So images children I, and OI, .style.left is equal to some sort of pixel denomination, some calculation. It's going to be counter for left times the card width that we calculated minus the card width divided by 2. And we want to shift to the left, so we need a negative here. And after we've done that, we need to decrement the counter for the left, minus minus. This all makes sense when I explain it on the whiteboard coming up. Images children, so we want to move this to the right, so we don't need the minus. We're using the counter for the right half of the deck. Card width, instead of subtracting, we're going to add like this. And of course, we're using the counter for the right, not the left, and we plus plus. And if we're on the middle card, all we have to do is shift it like this. So positive direction, we just need the card width divided by 2. Let's call this function, and then let me explain the function. Order cards. Save, go back. There we go. So the cards are ordered. Let me turn on the overflow for the viewport. So that's all the viewport does. It blocks out everything outside of the 500 pixel by 300 pixel range. Save. There we go. So it creates the illusion that only one card's in the on the carousel. Let me turn off the red and turn off the hidden, so that you guys can see. You guys know what I'm talking about. So delete this. Do this. All right. So let me explain the order cards function. All right. So how is that the order cards function working? Let's say we have the stack of cards, the deck in the center, and for the sake of this example, we're going to do more than 3 cards, or the numbers are going to overlap. It's going to be really confusing. So let's say we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 cards, 0 through 4. The counter on the right starts at 1, so let me just say CR starts at 1, and the counter on the left here starts at the middle card by index. So it starts at 2 right here. So CL is equal to 2. How do we get these 2 cards to show up here and these 2 cards to show up here? Control Z, 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 Z. Z, there we go. So for the formula for the left, what we're saying is counter for left times new width. We'll explain this in a moment. This is a bit more complicated. We're just concentrating on these guys. Counter for left times width, and it's going to be a minus because we're moving in the left direction. And then counter for right times width. So let's deal with the left half first. So counter for left times the new width. Counter for left starts at 2. Let's say, for the sake of keeping it simple, 100 pixel widths. So 2 times 100 is 200. And then we decrement the counter for left. So what this says is for this card right here, starting here, move 200 pixels by to the left. So 100, 200. So that 0 card ends up here. And then we decrement the 2 to a 1 times 100 pixels to the left. So move 100 pixels. So this card here goes right here. The counter for the right is just the opposite. So start at 1 times 100 is equal to 100 pixels. So start from here. This card right here goes right here. Increment 1, so we get 2 by 100. We get the 200 pixels. So that goes here, 100, 200. So that gets thrown or moved over there. So that's how we're using these counters to shift all of the cards to the left, and all the cards to the right, What is that card width divided by 2 stuff? This guy right here. That has to do with this guy right here, this transform. And so visually, these cards look like they're in the middle of the screen. So let's say this is our screen right here. The cards look like they're here. Mathematically, they're not here. So let me do this. When we put a top 50%, left 50%, we're putting all of the cards right here. And then we apply the transformation, -50, -50, which drags the cards 50% on their X to the left and 50% on their Y up. So it repositions all of those cards to look like they're in the center. And because we transform them in the center, 50% of the width of a card, for this example, it's going to be 50 pixels. So all of these cards are shifted initially. They're not at 0, 0. They're not at a complete neutral position. They're offset by card width divided by 2. So all of these cards have a 50 pixel deficit on the left side on their X. And we don't really care about the Y because we're not scrolling these images up. So we're just going to deal with the X. Let me draw that a bit neater. So all these cards have a 50, for example, a 50 pixel deficit in the, or surplus, as you'll see, in the X direction going to the left. That's why when we shift the cards here, down here, let's take in this whole calculation and see what we get. Let's go here. So what's 2 times 100? That's 200. But remember, we're already 50 pixels to the left. So already 50 pixels in the left direction. So we start here, 100, 200, and 50. So this card here, let me do this, 100, 200, 50. So this card right here is actually starting here. This is why we need to subtract that deficit from this calculation so that we can actually have, that's the 250. 250 minus 50 is 200. So the card actually now starts here. Same thing with this guy right here. Let me use a different color. 1 times 100 is 100. minus that 50 because we're moving in the left direction. What we get is 100 and then 150. We subtract that deficit and we get pushed back over here. And so this one card ends up where we want it to go. Same thing for the counter right. Let's do red here. Move just here. So remember, we're 50 pixels in the left direction. So what's 1 times 100? That's 100. Let's do this. So this guy right here, start here, 100, but we're 50 pixels in the left direction. So we go back 50 pixels. So this card starts here. We want it to start here, which is why we add 50 pixels to get rid of this guy right here. So that guy goes here. 2 times 100 is 200. So start here, use green, 100, 200, minus that 50 puts us back here, plus the 50 to take it away puts us right back here. So that 4 gets drawn right here. So that's what the new width divided by 2 is doing. It's just getting rid of this deficit or surplus depending on which direction we're going. That's why when we're on the middle card right here, you'd expect us to not transform it in any way. But the left of that middle card, let me stop that. The left of this middle card is actually at 50 for the purposes of transforming or navigating this carousel later on. We need this guy to be 0. That's why we need to add. So this guy's negative 50 in the left direction. We need to add 50 pixels right here, right there, in order to make it neutral, the 0 pixel value. So that's all these new widths divided by 2 are doing. And so that's what ordered cards, the function, is doing. Just taking the left half or treating the left half of the deck one certain way, and then treating the right half of the deck a different, just the opposite, the inverse way. Let's get back into the code. All right, so you guys have an idea of how that ordered cards function's working. Let's make this thing responsive. Currently, it's just remaining the same size. Let's fix that. So let's partition the code off. Like, we'll do it here, yeah. So we'll do a slash, we'll do stars, and we'll go, not so many stars, we'll do responsive code like that. Need a star there. The yank, paste. Do one of these guys. 2, we'll do a 5 CIW, fix with stars. All right, so we're gonna make the, instead of a pixel denomination right off the bat, right here, 500 by 300, we're gonna make these images size in terms of percentage and then calculate a pixel. So we're gonna have an image take up 50% of the width of the window like this. So we need a new width like this, which is instantiated with a 0.0. And we need an image width as percentage like that. We'll just make it 50% for now. I'm going to write a piece of code. I'm going to comment it out for the duration of this tutorial until we get to the end, but I'm just going to write it now so I don't forget. So image width as a percentage, if the window.innerWidth, so window.innerWidth, so if they resize the window below 768, we just want the image to take up 100% of the window width. So that's what this line is doing. So if that window.innerWidth is less than, you can tweak it to whatever dimension you want. We're just going to use 768. So if it's less than 768, we're going to set the image width as a percentage to 100%. If not, if it's greater, we're just going to keep it at that 50% or whatever you decide to put it at. Let me comment that out for now. All right, so we have the percentage that we want the image to stay at. We need to calculate the pixel. What is 50% of this width in pixels? So we'll do that here. So new underscore width is equal to, and I'm going to copy and paste some code because I can't remember this. So all this is doing is checking, let me blow this up full screen. All this is doing is checking what's the user viewing this carousel on. Android, WebOS, basically, are they on some sort of mobile browser? If they are, we want to calculate the width as a pixel value now. So we're just going to say image width as a percentage. We divide by 100 so we get the actual decimal value. Because 50% is not, you don't use it by multiplying 50 by a number. It's 0.5 of a number. So 50 divided by 100 is 0.5. So 50% of, and it's going to be the window.screen.width. And so the JavaScript code, if they're on a mobile, it uses the window screen.width. If they're not on mobile, they're on desktop, it uses that window.innerWidth. This is why we need the conditional here checking. If you were to use inner width on the on your mobile, it wouldn't work. So inner width like that. All right, so we have the new pixel value in the width. Let's do this, and this should really be above the order card stuff. So let me take this and put this up here. So let me delete this line here, put a space down here. All right, so let's use this new width. We just need to change that when I was talking about the viewport. We just change the size of the viewport, and since everything inherits from that viewport, it changes the size of the images. So let's just say viewport.style.width is now equal to that new underscore width, and that's in a pixel denomination or unit. We save, we go back, and there we go. The images are 50% of the width of the window. Why is it out of order though? Well, right down here we use the card width as a hard-coded value as the width to change stuff in our order cards functions. We calculated a new width, that responsive width. We need to use it here as well. So just going to change all of these. New underscore width. Same for this. New underscore width. Same for this. New underscore width. And two more here. So new width and new width. So let me save, go back. There we go. So these guys are 50%. Let's do this. Notice how they're still not resizing, but if I do an F5 here, they're 50% of the window. We have to listen for the resize event and just resize on the fly. So we go back here, and we just establish a window.addEventListener, and we just run the same logic. So we don't need the event object, arrow function, all this logic here, including the viewport style width. We'll paste here, we already established the new width variables, so we don't need this. We'll keep that there. Perfect. Let's save, go back. 50% of the width of the window, and the images shrink. Now, why are they doing that? Why aren't they shifting over to the left? Well, on the fly, we're calculating the new size, but we're not calculating the new order. So to do that, we just call the order functions here, or order cards function, excuse me. Save, go back. There we go. So no matter where we go, it's 50% of the width of the window, and it stays in the center like this. There we go. So we have the images responsive. Let's start with let's move on to the navigation button. So the next and the previous. I have two images here that we're going to use for that. The next button and the previous button. So let me close this, and we're going to need a container for this. So we'll have a div container to hold those buttons. We'll call it the nav-buttons-container. And each button is just going to be an image. So image, and the card or the class is going to be nav-button. And there should be an ID so we can hook up to the event listeners. We'll do prev, and we need two of those. That should work. First guy is going to be the previous picture, alt previous. The second guy is going to be the next with an alt of next, and its ID has to be next as well. Let's do some proper alignment here. Save, go back. All right, so let's center these guys on screen, and then we'll make it responsive. There's two ways that we need to make this responsive, these buttons. Their size and their position. We'll handle the size first and then the position. But first, let's center them on screen. Let's do a split screen so you guys can see it in real time. Let's do this. Let's do this. To the left just a bit. All right. So, nav buttons container, and we'll just center it. So we'll do a margin of, why am I doing that when I can just do this? Let's copy this guy here. Copy. We'll do a paste. Put a color so you guys can see how we're transforming it. Background color, and we'll do a blue. So RGBA, we'll do 0, 0, 255, 0.3. Margin padding width, we'll do 100 viewport width. We're just hard coding these for now. It's going to be dynamically resized, but just so you guys can see how we're transforming it. Position absolute 50, 50, 50. Save. 200. Let's go 20. It's way too high. All right, let's do a translate 50-50 margin absolute position. Okay, let's do so right now these buttons are in this container. we want to create a display of a flex for these guys. So display flex, and we'll do a flex direction of row. I think the default is row, but we'll just be explicit about this. Of row, we'll justify the content by space between, and we will align the items with center. So save. Okay. Now let's go to these buttons and make them smaller. So make them fit inside the flex display better. So let's do since we're done with this, let's do this. Width and height gone. All right. Let's do a .nav. This was just button, right? Or say buttons. Yeah, button. So the width, we'll do 50%. So each of these buttons take up 50% of the flex box. Save. There we go. We'll do a cursor of pointer so they know that they're allowed to touch it. And then we'll do let's do this right here. For this guy, pointer events off. So none. So we can't click on that little blue box, but we can click on the actual button. So pointer events for this, we'll do all. And a Z index so they're on top of everything. All right, there we go. Let's go into the code and make this thing responsive. Clicks, clicks, perfect. So let's capture that, or all of the buttons, excuse me. So first thing, we'll just do the nav buttons container. We'll do a document query selector, and that was .nav -buttons -container. We need each button separately, so button will do previous document query selector by ID, so prev, copy paste, and this should be next, and this guy should be next as well. All right, so let's size them responsively and then position them responsively. And so we're going to size these guys relative to the width of a viewport. So we'll go down here, right here. Let me put some space here. There you go. So we'll start the previous button. .style.width is equal to some sort of pixel denomination. Okay, and what it's going to be? Well, it's going to be new width. And since each button is taking up 50% of the width of the flex box, and the flex box is going to be relative to the viewport, we're just going to do this just so make sure it's taking up, or make sure we're holding true to that the 50%, I would say paradigm, but the way we're structuring this program. So new width divided by 2, and we'll say, what should we do? Let's say, we'll just 30%. We'll see what that looks like. So copy paste. We'll do the next as well. That reminds me, we're doing the width. We're not doing the height. We'll just say the height's the auto, so it maintains its proportions. So we'll save. There we go. And let's put that piece of code in the resize listener and see what we get. Let's paste that right here. We'll save. Let's resize the window, and the buttons grow in size like that. So let's go and make the position responsive. And so for the positions, we're not going to use pixels. We're going to use viewport width, which is like a percentage of the width. And we'll do it relative to the, actually we'll do it standalone. Just like this one here, just like this logic right here. We'll say something like, let's say nav buttons container. We'll say placement as percentage. You can put whatever you want. We'll do 60 for this video. So 60, same line here. So in case you want to do, and we'll do it, I'll show you later on. When they're lower than 768, we want the buttons to go full 100%. So one of these, the right button on the far right and the left button on the far left. So that logic looks like this. Nav buttons as a percentage, same logic, 100 or just whatever we put it as. So nav buttons as a percentage. Let me turn that off. We'll copy this logic. We'll put it into the, actually let me do this first, and then we'll copy it and put it into the resize listener. So the nav buttons container, placement as a percentage, container, that style.width is going to be equal to this. And that was a viewport width unit size. Just the nav button placement as a percentage. We'll save. So that's 60%. Let me do this so you can see what I'm talking about. That's 60% of the width of the window. So background color, we'll just do blue, save. There we go. So let's take that code and put it in the resize listener. And where was it? We'll take this guy here, take these 3 lines and delete that line. Paste that here. We don't need this repeated. Percentage, and we need this guy right here. So no matter where we go, it's going to be 60% of the width of a window. There we go. Let me turn on that stuff I was talking about so you can see it. Turn on both of them. Let's go blue off. We'll turn these two guys on. And these two guys on as well. Let me do this so you guys can see the transformation. Let me save. Go back. So 60%, 60%. The viewport of the card width is 50%. Let's shrink below 768. There you go. So 100% and 100%. So those are the buttons. They don't work right now. Let's put on those little radio buttons. So let me do this. Let me take that part off. Actually, let's keep it that way. Yeah, so let's keep it that way. All right, so inside the viewport, we'll have another container for some buttons. We'll call this one, those were the nav buttons. We'll call these the selection buttons container. Dash container. And we're going to fill this out programmatically based on how many images, but just so we can see something, we'll hard code one button. So div dot, and it's going to be a selection dash button, like that. All right. And so let's begin with the selection buttons container. So selection buttons container. Let me turn on a color so you can see how we're transforming it. RGBA, we'll do a, what is it? Let's say blue again. 255, 0.3. We'll do a width. We do margin first. Margin 0. Padding 0. Width, 1 viewport, or 100 viewport width. Height, we'll do 20 pixels. There we go. All right, so let's anchor this guy at the bottom of this the viewport. Let me turn the viewport on because there's going to be something that looks kind of weird if I don't. Let's do a background color of gray. Okay, so let's anchor this container for the selection buttons on the bottom. Notice how the viewport is larger than the height of the image. I would not recommend coding this to where the selection button container anchors to the bottom of the image, because if you do that, if you have different sized images, you're going to have these radio buttons jumping up, down, it's going to look inconsistent. So we always want this selection container to be anchored to the viewport. This thing's consistent no matter what the size of the images are. So let's go back down, and what are we on here? So we'll do a position of fixed, because we want it fixed to the bottom. A bottom of 0, like that. And we'll do a left to center it. For the responsive code, it needs to be centered like this, 50%. And to drag that back over to the center, we'll do transform, translate x. We're just working with the x. We're not modifying the y. The y is just a fixed 0. So translate x, negative 50% like that. And that drags it back to the center. Let's code up one of these buttons. And just like we had the pointer event stuff, we need that here as well. So pointer events, turn that off. So they can't click on this this blue space, but they'll click on the button. Pointer events, we'll do none. All right, so let's go for the selection button. We'll do a width of, let's do this first, margin 0, padding 0. Let me scroll up. We'll do a width of, let's do 20 by 20. Again, these just initial values. We'll do some responsive coding in a second. Width, height's the same because we want a circle. And the border radius, 50% because we want a circle. And the background color, we're just going to do gray. Background color, gray, pointer events, all, so we can click on them, and a cursor of pointer. Save. There we go. So that's it. We now need to make this container a flex box, just like the nav buttons container. So we'll go here. We'll say display a flex. We'll do an explicit flex direction of row. Direction of row. And this time, justify content, we'll do space evenly. Let me put more than one so you guys can see how it's spacing evenly. And we'll do one more, 4. Space evenly. Align item center. We save. There we go. All right, so let me get rid of the, what should I get rid of? We'll keep the colors. Yeah, so you guys can see it. But since we're doing this programmatically, let's do that first. So delete all these, save. There's none there. We'll make these on the fly. Let me do this. I don't want to have to write it. So right here, let me capture the stuff we need. So we need the, what did we just create? Selection We'll do buttons, and we'll do container, and that's equal to document query selector, and that was dot selection buttons plural container. There we go. So let's loop through the images and create those buttons. Very simple. For let I equals 0, I is less than images dot children. If I can spell it as children dot length I plus plus, and we're just going to say selection buttons container plus equals, or dot inner HTML, excuse me, inner HTML plus equals, and this line right here. So we'll cut this out, delete this space, and we'll just do something like that. Save. There we go. Three images, 3 buttons. Let's see if it's actually working. Let's go. 5 images, 5 buttons. Or is that 6? That's 5. Let's delete these 2. Back to 3. All right. So just like we had 2 ways that we needed to make these buttons responsive, 2 ways for these as well. So for the size of the buttons and the position of the buttons. For this one, we'll handle the positions first. It's simple. We'll make that relative to the width of the viewport. So we'll just do right down here. We'll say the selection buttons container dot style dot width. And again, you can play with whatever you want. We're just going to make it 50%. So we're just going to say, and it's going to be a pixel denomination. We'll say new width divided by 2. I think this looks best. So just always centers it in the viewport or the carousel. Now we need to make these guys responsive. So we need a for loop for that. So why am I writing that when I can just copy this? Copy this, paste that here. And we want to do 3 lines here. Selection buttons container dot children HILDREN and style transition duration again, just to make sure we're not overlapping. We don't have any stragglers in terms of timing, so it might screw up in the future if you add timing, like custom transitions to things. So just to make sure we zero it out like this. Paste, paste. Actually, paste once. Container style. We need the width, and that is going to be, we will, relative to what? What should be relative to? Let's do this. We'll say, let's try this. New width. So the width of the image carousel, we'll say 3%, so 0.03. Same thing for the height here. And we can't do just like we did with these buttons here, we need a height of auto. There's no image. These are divs, they aren't images, so there's no actual height to auto. So we need to actually set the height here. So height like that, same thing. New width times 0.03, 3%. We save. And nothing happened because we forgot the actual unit. So px, save. There we go. So that's about 0.03. I think it looks pretty good. Let's copy this code here and put it in the resize listener. Right here. Paste. Put a space here. So no matter what we do, these navigation or selection buttons, they remain in the center of the viewport, and they remain 3% of the size of the width of the viewport. So let me save. Let's start resizing this thing. There you go. So they grow and they shrink. You can do whatever you want. Maybe 0.01 would look better. Whatever. We'll keep those. All right, so everything's responsive. Let me see if the mobile works. Let's bring this guy over here. And there. So everything is responsive. We can start coding the functionality. And again, remember when I said that we wanted this to anchor to the bottom? It looks weird here. You can solve this by, if the width, so more conditionals. If the width of the screen, window.screen.width is less than, what would look, when it starts to look horrible, probably less than 400. So if it's less than 400, you can change this property, the bottom not to be 0. You can put it to like, I don't know, maybe, what would that be? Maybe like 20 to 30%. Let me see that. Let me see this. Let me just try that. Let's say, let's do this. So that would be the bottom. We'll just do right here. So let's go window.screen.width is less than 400. And we'll put that was going to be the selection buttons container.style dot bottom is equal to, if it's less than 400, we'll do like 20%, else we'll do 20%, else we'll do the 0%, we'll do 0. Let me see if that works. So if we go less than 400, there we go. So it stays up there. You might want to do that depending on your use case. But for now, we'll just keep it at the bottom of the viewport. And so everything's responsive. Let's move on to actually making this thing functional. All right, so before we begin actually coding the logic for the navigation buttons, let me change the images. It's easier to track what the images are if they're numbered. So let me take these guys off. There we go. You copy one of them. This guy's going to be the first. And I'm just going to use some images I drew up. /1 PNG, copy, 2, 3. There's 4 of them, but for now we're going to use 3 of them. So that's 2, that's 3, and that is 2, and that is 3. Let me save. There we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's keep track of which image or which card in the carousel they're on. So let's do this. Let current card equal, and for now it's going to be, the way the logic works is it takes the middle card in the carousel and makes it the active card. So for now it's going to be the middle card, but at the end of this video we're just going to, of course, start the slideshow, the carousel at the first card here. So middle card by index. All right, let's go down. Let's partition the code so it's not so messy. So we need to know, or we need to keep track of where these images are on the screen. So their X values, their left values, coordinates. We'll do that with an array. And we'll call that an array of last positions. Let's fill that array up now. So just loop through, let i's equal 0, i's less than images, children, length, I++, plus, and we'll just say last positions dot push, parse float. We'll take the images, children, its style.left property. There we go. For the button nav specifically, we just need a variable called scroll in progress. So scroll in progress, set to false, just so they can't spam. You'll see when we use it, they can't spam the next and previous buttons too quickly. So let's start with the next button, this guy here. So when we click this guy, we want the third card to go here, second card to go here, and eventually this first card loops back around over here. Not just yet though. So we basically just want to shift all the cards to the left. So let's do a button, not up here, excuse me. Button next, add event listener, click. We don't need the event object. Let's copy this loop right here because we want to shift all of the cards. So what is the updated position? Where do we move these cards? Const updated position. Let's go paint. Brush size, here we go. That's the first card here. Second card here, third card here. When we click the next button, we want to shift all the cards to the left. So we want this card here to become the active card here. So how many pixels do we shift the carousel or these images to the left? Well, this guy starts here, is top left corner, the coordinate, just one whole card width over to the left. And so the new position is just going to be the old position plus the new width, or the width of one card. So we close this. So updated position is going to be equal to, where's the card right now? And because we want to shift to the left, we just subtract the width of one card, like that. Okay. Let's actually move these guys. So images, children, and I style left equals, and it's just going to be the updated position in pixels. So px, and of course, because we're moving it on the left, or the visually, we need to keep track of where it is using the last positions array. So last positions of I equals updated position. There we go. Let's save and see if we got it. There we go. Now notice it's not wrapping around. We can just keep clicking. It just keeps moving the images left, 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 left. Let's handle that now, and then we'll just we'll code up this button after we're done this button. So how do we know when to take this first card and put it at the end of the deck, or if we have this button here, when to take the third card and put it at the beginning of the deck. Well, there are boundaries here. And when we cross or touch one of those boundaries, we know that card's out of bounds. And so move the card. So let's say we had the first card here, second card here, third card here. Let's say we moved all the cards to the left. How would we know to take this card and put it at the end of the deck here? Well, what is this right here? Minus one card width. Well, if you move all the cards to the left, one card width, this guy moves here. It goes quote unquote off the screen, and that's when we know to take this card and wrap it and put it over here. And so the boundary for the left and the right is just going to be, where's the first card? Give me one width minus that, or before that. Where's the last card? Give me one width after that. So this is the boundary for the left. If this card here touches the boundary, put the card over here. This is the boundary for the right. If this card here crosses this boundary, just take this card and put it at the beginning of the pack. So let's calculate the right boundary, the left boundary, and then we're going to create a function that handles the reorganizing of the deck. So let me close this, and we'll do it here. And it has to be lets, because we need to, if the user resizes their window, the right boundary and left boundaries change dynamically. So we'll do right boundary, and it's just going to be the last card. So we'll do a parse float. Give me the last card, number of cards by index. Give me its left value, style.left, and just add a new width to it. For the left, it's the same, but with the first card. So let me copy this stuff here, paste that here, semicolon, and we want before, so minus, and it's just the first card, so 0. So we have our left boundary and our right boundary. Let's write the function that handles the repositioning stuff. Let's do that here. Let's say function, what should we call it? Let's call it handle boundaries. Boundaries like that. Nope. There we go. And so let's do since we have this guy coded for, when we click this, all images move to the left. Let's handle the left boundary first. So if the first card, so wherever the first card is, if it's less than or equal to that left boundary, we know it's quote unquote off screen. So let's move it to the end of the deck. So let's calculate the end of the deck. End of the deck is just equal to, where's the last card? There we go. And just give me one more width added to that card. So we have the end of the deck, or where to put the first card. Let's actually move those cards visually first. And you'll see why I said visually in a second. And so images, children, and we want to move the first card to the end of the deck. End of deck, that was in pixels over there. We'll do last positions, keep track of the first right there. That's end of deck. Let us save and go back. All right, so I click this. The first card here should go to the end of the deck. And it didn't. Why? I didn't call the actual function, which I always forget to do. There we go. Save, go back. I click, and the first card goes here. Let me keep clicking. So watch this. Let me go here. Let me go here. Let's go to the elements. Here, here. And so the middle index is the active card. Whichever cards the user sees in that viewport, it's always going to be in this case, a 3-item array, the second index here. So 2 lines up with 2. Watch what happens when I click this, click the next. The order is 2, 3, 1. What's the order in the HTML? Well, it's still 1, 2, 3. And so these 2 lines, they just move the cards kind of superficially. We now need to go into the HTML and actually take let me do an F5. So we have 1, 2, 3. We have 1, 2, 3. When I click this next, 1 goes to the end of the deck. This 1 needs to go at the end of this array here. So let's do this. We'll handle the HTML as well as the new positions. So let me do this. Last positions. There you go. this is that first card. When I click next, the 1 visually goes at the end of this carousel. We also need to take its position, its corresponding position in the last positions array, and make this guy go at the end of this array. So we have 2 things to do here. We'll handle the HTML first. So images, we want to append a child. We want to take the first guy, images, children, 0, and just append it to the end of this HTML tree. Images, children, and that was number of cards by index. That handles the HTML. Let's handle the last positions. And so it's going to be last positions, splice. Where do you want to put it? At the end, move 0 over. And which one do we want to put? We want to put the first element of the array. To take the first element out of an array, we just use the shift method. So dot shift like that. So let's save, go back, and pay attention to the HTML here. 1, 2, 3, we have 5. 1, 2, 3. And why didn't it do that? Let's go back. No, I put in the wrong for loop. Let's take that out here. Take this out, put in the actual boundaries. There we go. Save, go back. Now it should work. There we go. Click, 2, 3, 1. Click, 3, 1, 2. Click, back to 1, 2, 3. There we go. Put in the wrong function. All right, so that's the left boundary. Let's code up the right boundary, and then we're just going to copy and paste and reverse the logic for the previous button. So let's go here. If, we'll say the last position of the last position, if that is greater than or equal to the right boundary, we want to just do all this stuff just kind of reversed. So we copy all this. We'll paste that here. And we want the beginning of the deck. So beginning, 2 ends. Beginning of deck. And that's just going to be where the first card is, minus 1 whole width of a card. We want to move the last card to the beginning. So number of cards by index. Move you to the beginning of the deck. Keep track of your last positions array. That's the number of cards. And we want to shift in the HTML. We want to not append a child. We want to insert before. Insert before. And which one do we want to insert before? We want to take the last card. So number of cards. And just insert it before the first guy in the HTML tree. Position, splice. Let's splice at the beginning of the array. Move 0 over. And to take the last guy out of an array, we use the pop method. Let's code up the previous button. So we can copy all of this. We can paste that here. We can move this to previous. And we want to shift all of the cards positive in the right direction. So we'll change this guy to a positive. We'll save. We'll go back. We go next. There we go. We'll go previous. There we go. HTML tree is moving. Let's prevent them from spamming so quickly. That's what this scroll in progress is for. And so if there's a scroll in progress, we're just going to say return. So don't allow them to scroll with the next or previous button. If there isn't, they're allowed to scroll. So scroll in progress is equal to true. There we go. Let them do all their scrolling. And we'll set a timeout. I think we'll go for like 200 milliseconds. Actually 100. Yeah, that'd be probably good. So scroll in progress, set that back to false. So after 100 milliseconds, they're allowed to scroll again. Let's copy this logic and put it in the previous button. There we go. And there's 4 lines. There we go. Save. Let's span the button. It should be just a bit. Yeah, that's you can play with the timing. I just think that looks better. Okay, so that's the next and the previous button. How about this? Before we get to clicking on these guys and having the carousel animate, let's light these guys up based on which card they're on. So let's create a function for that right here. What should we name that function? Let's name it function. Let's say handle selection. Let's say update selection. Yeah, that's better. And all we're going to do is we're going to loop through. So let me copy this loop here. And we're going to go by current card. So we're just going to loop through all of the selection buttons using this loop. And we're going to say, use a ternary, if I is equal to, and we're just going to say current card. So if the current guy we're looping through is equal to the current card, then we're going to turn that cards, or that selection button to red. So selection button container, children of that I, style, background. Color, we'll put red, else we'll keep it at gray. So gray like that. Let's save, let's call that updated selection after we populate the actual radio buttons. There we go, and it starts at 2. At the end, we'll make it start at 1. So let's code up, when we click the next, we need this guy to shift over as well. So right here, and for previous as well. Right here, looks like a good place. So current card is equal to, if the current card is equal to the number of cards by index, so if it's on this one right here, when we click next, we don't want to say 4, because there's no 4th button. We're going to wrap the 4 back to 0. So if it's at the last one, it's equal to 0, else just increase the current card like that. And so we can copy this line and reverse the logic for the previous button. Current card, if it's the first one, we can't have a -1. So when we go to the end of the deck, else just subtract a current card. And of course, if we update the current card, we have to update the selection as well. All right, let's see what we got. We go next, third, should be the 1. There we go, 2, 3, let's go back. 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's code up these guys. When we click these guys, we want to switch or move the carousel. So selection navigation, add event listener. We'll do that right here, selection, add event listener. And we need this line first, we need the event object. All right, so if the event.target, that's where they're clicking in this selection container. So event.target, target is equal to, now they can click in here, they can click on the button. We don't care if they click in here. We don't want to do any or run any sort of code if they click in the div just on the button. So if they click in the div and not on the button, we just want to return. So don't do any of the actual logic in this listener. So if that's equal to the selections buttons container, just return. Now there's one thing we need to calculate before we move on, and that's because this guy's not an array, selection buttons container, it's not an array, we can't do something like, give me the console. So when I click one of these, it's not an array, so we can't do something like selections button.index of in order to find out which one of these they clicked. And so we're going to have to loop through all of these and check if the event.target right here is equal to the first child, second child, third child, if you have like 18 children, 18th child. So we need a loop. So let me we'll copy this loop right here. And we'll keep track of it in a new card variable. So let new card is equal to, this is going to be the one they've pressed in that selection button container. Let me delete all this. So we're just looping through, and if the, let's say, event.target is equal to selections container children of I, if it's one of those guys in here, we know that that I, the current one they're on, is equal to the number that they clicked. So this is 0, 1, 2. So we can just set the new card equal to that I. So we now know which one they've selected. We now need to move the carousel to that card. How do we do that? We need another loop. Let me just paint something for you. Let me delete this. All right, so let me go to paint. P-I-N-T. So we have 3 cards. We have, let's just say these are the radio buttons. So that's the first radio button, or index 0, index 1, index 2. That's, what's this, 1, that's 0, and this is 0, 1, 2. This is the current one we're on. Let's say we click, actually for this, yeah, that's okay. Let's say this is the one they click right here. So this is the current. So we have a current card like this, and we have an updated card. Excuse me, a new card like this. How do we know to move the carousel left so this card becomes the current card? Well, what is let's say the current card minus the new card, which is 2. What is 1 minus 2? What's negative 1? Let's just say for this example, each card is 500 pixels in width. What is negative 1 times 500? What's negative 500? So move every image over 1 or negative 1 width. So move this guy over here. It goes out of bounds, so it goes right here. Move this guy over here, and then move this guy here. So this guy becomes the active card. Same thing for the other direction. Let's say this guy is not the active or the new card. This is still the current card. This is the new card right here. What is the current card? 1, this guy right here, minus the new card, which is 0. Well, that's 1. What is 1 times 500? Well, it's positive 500. So move every card over to the right direction, 500 or 1 card width. So move this guy over here. The guy goes out of bounds, so he goes here. Move this guy over here, and move this guy to become the active card. So this guy becomes your current card. So this is the formula we're going to use. Current card minus the new card times the width of 1 card. So let's go here, and we'll just say const updated position. Updated position is equal to, where are they starting out at? So last position's I plus that formula. So it was current card minus the new card they chose, and all of that times the width of 1 card. So we have the updated position. Let's move the cards. Images, children, I, style left equals updated position, pixels, and last positions as well. I is equal to updated position. There we go. And we're done using their the new card and current card. We have to update which one they clicked. So current card is equal to new card now. There you go. And of course we update the selection. So let's save and go back. Now I missed a line. You'll see which line I missed in a second. So save, we go back. We close this. Let's go back here. And how about this? Let me put 4 cards on. Makes it more interesting right now. So let me do this. Yank, paste. Let's go 4, save. All right. So let's go to the 4th card. There we go, 4th card. Let's go to the first card. First card. Second, third. Let's click this guy. So we should go to the 4. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go back to the 3. There we go, 3, 2, 1. Watch this. Let's go to the 1. What's going on? How come it's screwing up now? Well, remember, we're moving the carousel around, right? Here. Right here. We're moving the carousel around. We're not handling the cards that go out of bounds. And it might be more than 1 card out of bounds. So let me go back to the paint for a second. Let's say we had this guy right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say we're starting on this card right here. You want to move to this card right here. And so we move the carousel to the left. So this card, let me go orange. This card goes here. And remember the boundary, the out of bounds is here. This card goes here. This card goes here. This card goes here. But this guy's still not, this guy's still here. This guy needs to go here. So we need to move over 1 more time. So this guy goes here. This guy goes here. So that's that guy. Let's say this guy is this guy. And let's say this guy is this guy. And finally, this guy right here is the active card. How many cards did we move out of bounds? Remember, it's less than or equal to. Well, we moved 1 card out of bounds, 2 cards out of bounds. So we need to call the handle boundaries twice to get this guy to go here, and then this guy to go here. And so let's create a loop and actually call the handle boundaries function. And we need to create a loop because, let's do this, let me go paint here. Let's say these guys are the radio buttons, so 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's say this is the current guy we're on. We want to move to this one right here. Well, we're shifting over 1, 2, 3. So it's like we're using that next button 3 times. So we have to call the handle boundaries function 3 times. How do we know, or how do we get the number 3 though? Well, what's the current card? So this would be 0. What's that minus the new card, which is 3? 0 minus 3 is negative 3, which take the absolute value, but that's how we're going to know to call the handle boundaries 3 times. If it was this one, it'd be 4 times, 5 times, whatever. So let's close this and create that loop here. So we're just going to say for let I is equal to 0, I is less than the absolute value of the current card minus the new card, and I plus plus, and we're just going to call the handle, not there, we're just going to call the handle boundaries function. So let's save, let's go back here, and let's go to the 1 and the 4, that's what caused it to blow up last time. So 1, click 4, let's click the next, we should get the 1 card, there we go. Let's go from 4 to 1, and let's click the next, we should get the second card, there we go. So it's not blowing up anymore. All right, let's finish this video off by implementing an autoplay function. So let's do this. Autoplay code. We're going to need 2 variables to keep track of some timers. So the first one's going to be a autoplay. This one's going to be a timeout ID timer. We'll do an autoplay we'll do an interval ID timer. And let's do a function that calls these guys. So start autoplay like that. First thing we need to do whenever we start a new autoplay, we want to get rid of the old autoplay, or else it's going to loop, or you're going to compound on like multiple autoplays. It's going to screw everything up. So we're just going to say clear timeout, autoplay timeout ID. We're going to say clear interval, autoplay interval ID. There we go. And now for the logic here. So a timeout equals set timeout, callback function, and let's wait 1500 seconds for this guy. And so we wait 1500 seconds, and then we start the actual ticking of the autoplay. And so that gets handled by an interval, a set interval equals set interval callback, and we'll tick every, let's say, 1100 seconds. All right, how do we tick this thing? Well, we already have this the logic. We want to just move the carousel to the left or visually to the right. So just copy the logic for the next button. So we'll go up here, right here. So that moves everything. That increments the current card, handle boundaries, update selection. Copy all those. We'll go down here. Paste, take this line, format. All right, let's call this function manually, and then we'll implement it into the buttons. So it's save, and how about, actually we'll do that after. All right, so let's call that, what was it, start autoplay, there we go. So we wait, I think it was 1200 seconds I put it at. We wait, and it should start. There we go, 3, 4, 1, 2. All right, good. So let's implement it as in when they click the button. After they're done clicking, we'll wait a certain amount of time and we'll start the autoplay. And we already have that functionality right here. After 100 milliseconds after they click the button, if they don't click again, we'll start the autoplay. So start autoplay. Same thing for the previous. And same thing for the selection. We don't have to wait because they click the selection. As long as they're clicking, it's going to clear the timeouts. So when they're done clicking on the actual radio buttons, this guy's actually gonna play. So let's see if that works. Save, go back. Let's click once, we wait. And there we go. Let's go back, previous. And we stop, we wait. And there we go. Let's use the radio buttons. Let's go to 1, let's go to 3, 2, 1, we wait. And there we go. Let's put some images in this guy. And that would be right here. So we can delete all these numbers. There we go. Let's save. Let me put the overflow as well on. Overflow. Save. Go back. Let me turn these colors off as well. We don't need the gray and we don't need that blue color right here. Save, save. There we go. And let's do an autoplay as soon as we start. So right down here in the code after, we'll just call the start autoplay function. All right, we save, we wait. And there we go. Let's resize. Resize. Now there are some aligning issues. Why is that happening? Well, I mentioned it but forgot to do it. Remember when I said we needed these guys to be lets? Because as we resize the width of the window, the right boundary and left boundary, they change. So we need to put those guys in the resize listener, including the last positions change as well. So copy all of those lines. We'll go back up here. Let's paste right here. We don't need the let since we already declared that. We format here. And we're not pushing in new values to the last positions. We're just updating the values that are there. So we just do an I like that. And that's equal to the parse float nonsense. Okay, let's save, go back, we wait. And it starts, and we'll start at 1 in a second. Here we go. Good, let's go mobile. Do this, there we go. Still goes, let's go next. We wait. There we go. Back to desktop, let's click this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and wait. And there we go. All right, let's start off at the first card. How do we do that? Well, we have a whole system set up to move around our carousel. So let's use that system. So we're just going to go into the program and click this button programmatically. So we don't need the update selection right here. You can delete, comment that out in case you want that in the code. So all the way down here, before we autoplay, let's just click the first child, or the first child of the radio buttons. 0.click, there we go, we save, we go back, and we start on the first one like that. We wait, and it starts to autoplay. There we go, and of course it's perfectly responsive. Alright, so that's going to be it for the video. Leave a like, it helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And I will see you guys in the next one.